Hello, welcome back to Learn Economia. Today we are continuing with our discussion of the chapter 2, that is theory of consumer behavior of introductory microeconomics. So this is a part 3 of our discussion. Let's move on to see what is more to discuss here. First of all, we have to talk about some indifference map and what is indifference map and how is it different from indifference curve, etc. We will be looking on to. I will first of all tell you the concept of indifference map. I have already told you the concept of indifference curve in the previous class. So now I am moving on to the concept of indifference map, and then we will proceed with the characteristic features of IC or indifference curve. So when we consider the preference of consumers over the bundles, this can be represented by using this particular figure. And this figure is known as indifference map. And what do you represent in an indifference map? So a family of indifference curve, that is what is we represent in the indifference map. Okay. So, and all the points in a single indifference curve, if you take each of these indifference curve, like IC1, IC2, IC3, these are the three indifference curve that we can have in this figure. Just take one of the indifference curve and consider the different points that you can have in the indifference curve. So at this point you will be having one point, at here you will be having another point, here you will be having another point, here you will be having another point, etc. So all some similar points are connected to form this curve, which would be considered as IC1, right? So all the points on an indifference curve would be representing the bundles which are considered indifferent by the consumer. Why he is indifferent? Because all these combinations would be giving you or the consumer same level of satisfaction. For the same reason, he is indifferent to these points. So if he compares this point and this point, he would be indifferent because he is having the same level of satisfaction if he purchase at this point or at this point. Okay. But when you consider the case of indifference map or a family of indifference curve, we have to give importance to another important assumption, and that is known as monotonicity. Monotonicity. So it says that between any two indifference curve, the bundle of one which lies above are preferred to the bundle which lie below. So if you compare these two indifference curve, the first and second, you can see that the first is first indifference curve, or this IC1, this is lying, this is 1 and this is 2. Okay. So IC1 is something which is below the IC2 and IC2 is above the IC1. And if you move to a higher and higher indifference curve, what it means is that you are consuming greater quantities of both the commodities, and that is what you mean by monotonicity. So more is preferred to less. Always a consumer would be preferring IC2 to IC1, because if you are in IC2, you would be getting more commodities and if you are at IC1, you will be getting less commodities comparatively. Now let's understand the features of IC or indifference curve. First of all, we could see that in the figure that we have seen earlier, we could see that it is a curve that slopes downward from left to right. And why does it slopes downward from left to right? If you are given two goods, bananas and mangoes, okay, here what happens is that when you increase the consumption of one commodity, you have to reduce the consumption of the other commodity. You will be forced to do that. If you are increasing the consumption of bananas, you have to forego some units of mangoes, because your income will not allow you to consume more of both the commodities. That is not allowed. Okay, this is something that we are considering in the case of same indifference curve. If you, as long as a consumer is on the same indifference curve, this is what happens. If you want to increase the consumption of bananas, it should be compensated by a fall in the quantity of mangoes and vice versa. And if a consumer does not forego some mangoes with increase in the consumption of bananas, it means that consumer have more of bananas with same unit of mangoes. And this would be taking the consumer to what is known as a higher indifference curve. So this is something shows the shift of indifference curve. It would be shifting up or something. Okay, shift. This is F, and this is movement on the same IC. Okay. Now let me explain some little more regarding the monotonous preference. So I have told that when you are considering the monotonous preference, what you consider is that the consumer is preferring more to less. So he would be preferring that bundle which has more of at least one of the commodities and no less of the other commodities. So he always considers more that is wanted. So let's compare two bundles, and a consumer's preferences are assumed to be such that between the one bundle which consists of x1 and x2 and other bundle consists of y1 and y2, if x1 x2 has more of at least one of the commodities and no less of the other commodities compared to y1 y2, then the consumer would be preferring only x1 y2 x1 x2. Why? Because this has got more commodities, at least more of one commodity and not less of other commodities compared to y1 y2. Okay, and that is why the consumer does this. So now let's come to the slope of IC. Here, what is slope of IC? Your delta y by delta x. That is the slope of IC. We have seen that IC is something which is sloping downward, and increase in the amount of bananas means you have to give away your mangoes, and increase in the quantity of mangoes means you have to give away your bananas. Anyway, this shows the movement along the same IC. Okay. Now the second characteristic feature of indifference curve shows that higher IC gives you greater utility. Why? Because higher IC would make you to have consumption of both the commodities at the same time. So this would be increasing your satisfaction. More commodity would be preferred to less. This is the concept of monotonicity. By applying the theory of monotonicity here, we can have more satisfaction when you shift to the higher indifference curve. So if you look at this table, you can see that different combination on the same indifference curve would be given. So combinations are A, B and C, and the quantity of bananas in this A is 1, quantity of mangoes would be 10. So here at B, the quantity of bananas increase, but quantity of mangoes remains the same. And in the case of point C, quantity of bananas increase and quantity of mangoes remains the same. Okay, so that was what we can have if you compare these points that are given in this curve. So at these points, the mangoes quantity remains the same and the bananas quantity. So this is in the initial IC1 it is 1, in IC2 it is 2, in IC3 it is 3. This is what is happening. So combination of A, B and C, this would consist the same quantity of mangoes but different quantities of your bananas. Here you can see that the combination B would be giving more bananas than A, B will provide the consumer greater utility compared to A. And similarly, if you compare B and C, C is giving him greater utility or greater satisfaction because he is getting comparatively more of bananas and the same units of mangoes. If you compare B and C, in B he is getting 10 mangoes and 2 bananas. In C he is getting 3 bananas and 10 mangoes. Okay, so comparatively the case of bananas doesn't change, but the case of mangoes is different for B and C gives more of bananas compared to B. So that is why C gives more satisfaction, and C lies on IC3. So here we can see that higher indifference curve would be giving the consumer higher levels of satisfaction. Okay, that is why we say this. Now the next point tell you that two indifference curves never intersect each other. Why? What will happen if it intersect? We will see. So two ICs never intersects. So let's deal with what will happen if it intersects. So the figure gives you something like that, a case of intersection. If you measure bananas along the x-axis and mangoes along the y-axis. Okay, so here you can have different points, point A here, point B here, and point C here. Okay, these are the 3 different points, and point A and B lies on the same IC, right? So it lies on IC1. A and B lies on same IC. So that means that the consumer would be indifferent between A and B because it gives the same satisfaction to the consumer. Is it so? And similarly, if you compare A and C, this lies on the same IC. That is, so A and B lies on the same IC, that is IC1, and A and C lie on the same IC, IC2. And here also A and C, since they are lying on the same IC, these give the consumer the same satisfaction. Okay. And remember, these two are actually in two indifference curves. If that is the situation, then we have to consider that A and C are the same and A and B are the same. If A and C are the same and A and B are the same, we have to say that B and C would be the same. C and B would be the same. That is something that we have to say. But C and B are not the same because B lies on IC1 and C lies on IC2. They are on different ICs. In the case of B, the consumer gets greater quantity of mangoes with same quantity of bananas. Isn't it? But if he is on point C, he would be getting same quantity of mangoes but less quantity of bananas. Or if it is like this is banana and this is mango, this is what happened. Anyway, here you can see that the first good that we have is 9. So there is no difference. But the second good makes the difference. So in the case of point B, it is 7. And in the case of point C, it is 5. So that means that point B is giving the consumer more satisfaction because it is having 7 units of the second commodity. So the consumer would be better off at this point, at point B, than at point C. So if the indifference curves intersect, it will give us some conflicting results. And that is why we consider that ICs will not intersect. ICs should not intersect. Okay. So That's all about today's discussions related to the features of ICs. I hope you have understood the concepts. So I request you to like, share and subscribe to this channel for more videos, and you can be a part of my Telegram channel and Telegram group to discuss your doubts. Thank you for watching.